Thank you, Jim. Okay, I'd like to call our March 15th meeting of the Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board to order. I think that the agenda stands as posted, although we're going to be continuing a number of items in the public hearing heading. Could I hear a motion to approve the meeting notes? I'm sorry, the March 1st meeting minutes from our March 1st meeting.
So moved.
So,
Second.
Second.
Thank you, Melody and Kathy. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Could I hear a motion to approve the meeting notes that Jim has prepared for us?
So
Moved,
moved,
Ed.
Melody.
Second,
Second, Kathy.
thank you. All in favor, please say aye.
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 Very good. Correspondence and announcements. I don't think I have anything specific at the moment. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to present right now?
Michael, I want to talk a little bit about training, but I'm wondering if I should do it now or wait till the break after the 6:35.
Why don't we wait? Because we might be able to gather some information and some suggestions from members of things that they'd like to have a little more information about and
Okay,
incorporate into a training session.
Okay.
That's a good idea, though. We definitely need to discuss that.
all right, so we'll take it after the 6:35 when we've got some continuations.
Yeah, I think that would be good.
Okay,
I think that I know Edna was discussing design guidelines and Gretchen was able to find a copy of the design guidelines, which are also Appendix A, I believe, in Article 5, supplemental regulations of our current zoning law, which refer you to the design guidelines that were actually adopted back in 1997, I believe. And they're what we are been asked by the planning board to apply when we're reviewing different applications, things like that. The problem is it's very hard to find them anywhere. I don't think they're included online, but I may be wrong.
they are not online.
They're not there? Okay.
They're not online.
I think a couple hard copies were found, but I think most of them now are all copies of the originals. But they do exist, and we are authorized to the extent practicable to apply them when we're reviewing applications, both commercial and residential. So we're going to try to get copies for everyone and see also if we can offer them to applicants when they have applications before us, particularly commercial applications, to assist them in doing the design work for the projects that they have in mind. So we're going to try and work on that and get that out. I know for a long time they were kind of like the holy grail. We knew we had them, but no one could find them. But they have been tracked down. So we'll see if we can't get those out to everybody. So they'll be available to you and in the future to applicants as well. I think that'll be very helpful.
Michael, both Jim and Gretchen have online versions.
Okay, excellent.
They certainly can forward them to planning board members. I know they have to Edna, who is looking for them. And I'm going to recommend that they become a part of, after we have the pre-conference meetings and we fill out the form of next steps. I'm just suggesting this should go to all applicants who move forward so that they get those guidelines up front as they're developing their plan and not after they've developed their plan.
I think that's an excellent suggestion. I think it'd be very helpful. Is that those issues often come up, and it would be nice if they have them in advance so they at least know what we're going to be looking for and what we expect.
Mhm.
I think we're at 6:35.
We are.
So, in hopes, our first public hearing tonight is Jennifer Parsons, 35 Bly Road, site plan review. Basically, she wants to put a small porch entryway on her existing home. Is Jennifer here or someone, a representative for Jennifer?
Hi, can you hear me?
Yep.
Yes.
Oh, goody. I did send a drawing again. It was in the original submission, but I see that it's not on this. So I sent it to Gretchen and Jim. Hopefully you have it. It's the exact same drawing. It just shows the porch with a railing all the way across the west side. And then there's also a photo of what the finish would look like. I think Gretchen forwarded it maybe a couple weeks ago, but I just sent it again to you in case you didn't have it handy. Yep, there it is. So because of the grading, we just think it's safer to have the railing all the way across the west side and then where it returns to the stair on the south side.
Okay. Yeah, I think we all did receive that, so we've all had a chance to look at it. I did a site visit for this particular one, and the house is very close to the road, so it was sort of a drive-by. And from my perspective, taking a look at this, I think it fits in very nicely with the house as it currently sits. I think it would be an improvement, and I can understand why she wants to do it. Quite honestly, I didn't see any issues with it whatsoever. It's Bly Road is, one of the more quiet little roads going back, and I personally saw no issues with it whatsoever. I don't know if we got a report from the CAB on this. I don't recall seeing one. Does anyone recall seeing a written report? No. Is there someone here from the CAB who could give a report to us? Okay, well, I think it's safe to say that given how this is going on a house, on some structure that in large measure already exists, it's just an enhancement. I don't think there are going to be any environmental issues, anything of that sort, anything with stormwater, any other problems like that from when I looked at it. Does anyone on the planning board have any questions for the applicant? Okay, Jim, is there anyone here in the public who would like to speak to this?
I don't believe so, but if there is, please let us know. A small crowd tonight. Oh, I think we're good, Michael.
Okay, thank you, Jim. Excuse me, could I hear a motion to close the public hearing, please?
So moved, Melody.
Second?
Second, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, I have a approval resolution to read. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows on the application by Jennifer Parsons for site plan review under Town Code Chapter 125 respectively for construction of a front porch at 35 Bly Road in the RC5 Rural Countryside Zoning District. We reaffirm the proposed action as type 2 under seeker. Based upon review of submitted information, including reports from planning board members, don't know if there was a CAB report, on their site visit to the project property, we find that the proposed work is consistent with the objectives and regulations of Chapter 125. With respect to the application for site plan approval, we find the proposed work and intended use to be consistent with Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12575, and approve the application inclusive of the application materials and plans by the Beckwith Group dated June 13th, 2020, with a revision date of October 24th, 2020. We authorize the planning board chair to stamp and sign the above cited site plan upon the applicant's satisfaction of the below conditions and/or requirements within 6 calendar months of the adoption of this resolution. Submission of the above cited site plan in the form and number specified within Town Code Chapter 125, except as may be modified to a lesser number by the chair in consideration of filing and distribution requirements. Payment of any outstanding fees and/or reimbursable amounts due the Town of Rhinebeck related to the review and processing of this application. Receipt of all approvals, authorizations, or certifications required herein or on any other town or from any other town, county, state, or other agency as required to undertake the proposed action. Could I hear a motion to approve, please?
So moved, Melody.
Thank you, Melody. Second?
Second, Edna.
Thank you, Edna.
Edna.
Any further discussion? I'll poll the board. Edna?
Aye.
Joe?
Aye.
Sean?
Aye.
Melody?
Aye.
Kathy?
Aye.
Elise?
Aye.
And I vote aye. Okay, as soon as you can get me your final plan for this, so I can stamp and sign it, you can get a building permit to put on this little enhancement to your home.
Thank you so much.
You're very welcome. It seemed a long
Is it
time
okay?
coming,
Sorry
but
to
now we're
interrupt.
done.
Michael, is it okay to use the one that was submitted earlier from David Beckwith?
As long as it shows, in all accuracy, exactly what you want to do, that should be fine.
Yeah, everything on the site plan, the plan is accurate. It just has the addendum of the railing drawing that I just sent you.
Okay, what I would do is just include that drawing along with the site plan. We'll just staple them together and that should be fine.
Okay, wonderful. Thank you so
Michael-
much, everybody.
I'll also
Thank
send you an email with what's needed.
Okay,
Yeah,
Thank
Michael,
you.
this is Jim. I just wanted to let everyone know the resolutions, when they're drafted or draft resolutions, they do get tweaked sometimes when we go through, if they don't have necessarily the exact information. So if we didn't have a CAB report, that'll be stricken from that. But we'll add in the additional sheet, Jennifer, to the reference here into the resolution.
Thank you so much.
Yep.
Thank you,
Super.
Jim.
Thanks, everybody.
I know.
Good luck.
Take care. Thank you. You too.
Okay, next public hearing for 640 is Kathy Marriott, 2628 Bolenbecker Road, and it has been requested to be continued now to our April 19th meeting at 6:35. Request coming from the applicant. Could I hear a motion to continue this public hearing until April 19th at 6:35, please?
So moved, Elise.
Thank you, Denise. Thank you, Edna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye,
Aye.
Aye.
very good.
Aye.
Okay. I guess technically we're supposed to wait till the time for the next two. Of course, they're both. Jim, do we have any of the public here?
Barrett's going to be continued as
Yeah,
well.
Yeah, that'll be continued. And I'm just wondering if there's anyone here
They're open for comment.
on either of these two.
No, Michael, there's only Howard and Eric for one of the referrals, and Mark was on. It seems like he
Okay.
dropped off, but maybe
Well, then-
If you want to be safe, I can talk about the training possibilities.
yeah, just so we move a few of other things, and then we can get back to these after those times. Then we'd be fine as long as we remember to
Okay.
do them.
Melody, you have the floor.
Thank you. We are required as a planning board members to undergo 4 hours of training every year that is certified. And in the past few years prior to COVID, what we tried to do locally is to work with the town board and set up our own training around issues that are kind of relevant to Rhinebeck and things that we're grappling with. And unfortunately, again, because of COVID, we weren't able to do that last year. But it seems that I think we have a new opportunity. In the past, board members have asked for sort of a revisit to the basics of the roles and responsibilities of planning board members. And also a discussion with council about what things we can do, where we have some latitude for decision-making and areas where we don't. And also, we're more and more seeing a need for greater conversation between our HPAC committee and the CAB. So I floated the idea to Jim and Michael that we work with our council, Kim and John, and Jim, to set up an in-house training, 2 hours of which would be around sort of the basics of what are our roles and responsibilities, what are the limits of our authority. And then the second part, which would perhaps and more likely than not be a separate training session, focus on the roles of HAPAC, the roles of the CAB, how we interact with them, and specifically perhaps someone coming in from maybe SHPO to talk to us about the responsibilities we have with archaeology under seeker and how those kinds of projects are reviewed. So I wanted to run that idea by you and get some feedback. I know Edna's had some specific ideas about training in the past. I thought it would be a good refresher for those of us who have been around for a while, and maybe some really good information for people who are fairly new to the board. So I open it up to comment and suggestions. I think I'll just close by saying what we'll do if you have interest in these topics is, have Jim do some kind of a doodle poll to see when everybody's available. I'd probably like some feedback tonight in terms of what are terrible times for you. 2 hours is an awful lot to tack on to a regular board meeting. These would have to be standalone training sessions. So let me open it up for comment, questions, concerns, ideas.
The 4 hours, Melody, is obligated by, I'm sorry, I missed that.
It's a requirement for service on the planning board.
But where is it required? That was my question.
I think it's required from the state, is it not, Jim?
I believe it is, Melody, yes.
Sorry, I was
believe
on mute.
it's-
Yes, it is. Yes.
It's required by the state, and you can get it through the Dutchess County Planning Federation. And you get a certificate that tells you you've got your 2 hours or your 1 hour, your whatever, and you're supposed to turn it in to your town clerk. Often we've found that they are on topics that just don't apply to what's going on in Rhinebeck. So that's why we've turned to this new model of trying to identify what we're looking at and finding people who can train us on the things we need to know.
And the expectation for the planning board with regard to the session that could be with the members of the Preservation Committee and or the CAB includes the members of that board and committee or not?
I think so. I would love to see them involved. I would envision John going over the laws that established those committees and what their roles and responsibilities are, so that the planning board understands what you're supposed to be doing, and vice versa. Your members of your HAPAC committee understand how they interface with the planning board. We have a relatively new CAB, and we're not seeing them. They're not here, so we'd like to really sort of ramp up that relationship so that we've got better communication going on, and maybe by all meeting together, we can make that better.
Other thoughts on this, other members of the planning board, what you'd like to see, things that you feel would assist you in participating in the role that we have as members of the planning board?
So Michael, just one more thing. Gretchen, do we include therefore the members of the committee or Jim or whoever's doing the notice of, do we include them in the calendar choosing? All right,
Yes,
then I'll let them know in advance then that it's coming.
Yeah, we're hoping for a good turnout because clearly we all need to work together. And I think it's safe to say there's been some disconnects along the way that, for example, there's no one from the CAB here tonight to report. And I think that if we can all work together, sit down, talk together what we're all supposed to be doing and the importance of what everyone's doing, it might help to smooth things out a little bit. I mean,
well,
that's
and council has said that they would work with Jim to develop a draft agenda for these meetings. So you don't have to be very explicit tonight about the kinds of things you'd like covered. There's still time to email Jim or email Michael and I and say, hey, I'm really curious about this. I don't understand this. Here are some of the questions I'd like answered. I don't mean to put you on the hot seat tonight, but I just wanted some feedback in terms of whether you thought this would be a type of training that would be helpful.
I think it would be helpful. I have taken 3 of the ones that Gretchen sends around already. So, which have been kind of very high level. I think something more specific to Rhinebeck and the growing community that we have here. One topic I'd love to see is just kind of future thinking of affordable housing or something along those lines, which is, I think, a constant growing challenge in our growing community we have.
Okay, Sean, thanks. Anyone else?
Yeah, I would like for there to be some ability for discussion rather than a presentation only.
Okay.
As you know, I have been wanting for a long time to have a workshop on what is the authority of the planning board in specific situations, not just some general overview, And I think in order to do that, we ought to be able to come up with some, for instance, questions that it would be helpful to have John Lyons there for.
Well, John will be presenting with us on the workshops. So it would be really helpful, Edna, if you would wanted, at least for yourself, and maybe take the lead for others in terms of the what if questions that have bothered you over the years.
I'd be glad to.
That would be extremely helpful. I appreciate that.
Yeah, I think just in more general terms, and I'll think about more specific questions, but yeah, I think it would be super helpful, even down to, you know, simple things of process being laid out, which is very general, but sometimes, you know, obviously I came in and then COVID happened right away, but just even really understanding that more fluidly is really good. I think Sean makes a good point about affordable housing, which is just going to continue to grow as an ongoing issue here. And as, you know, suggestion for a little bit of dialogue so that way on the spot challenges can be answered. So overall, I think it's a great idea. I think it's necessary.
Good. I would just make a point, and you know, it's come up in the past, and maybe John can explain this to us, and affordable housing is a good topic around that. And that is to distinguish between the role of the planning board in driving the development of opportunities for affordable housing. Is that the role of the town board? Where can the planning board fit in those kinds of things? Because it can be a little unclear. And so I put it down, and I will certainly share that there's an interest in the planning board understanding that, and maybe he can help us understand where we can influence what's happening and where we just simply need to react to the law.
In regards specifically to housing, maybe this is a question someone here can answer. It's my understanding that one of the challenges that we have with it is in regards to lot size in the village can be a smaller and perhaps more obtainable to have affordable housing, and this sort of integration into larger lot sizes, which reap larger homes. And it's almost seems like the barrier between village and township creates a challenge where if that line was a little more fluid, or, you know, I don't know, it seems to me like that's part of the challenge. Is that?
Well, I think it is. I think part of the answer will be those things need to be developed through comprehensive plans, as opposed to implementation of planning board rules. But you know, clearly it's on everybody's mind, so we'll bring that up and see what John has to say about it. All right, well, I'm not hearing anybody say it's a bad idea. I think we'll get back to John, and we'll try and start polling you to see when you're available and who we can line up. And it would be helpful if you'd sort of email us and let us know what are terrible times. You know, I mean, occasionally in the past when we've done this, we've done things like 4 to 6 in the, you know, on a day we pick, trying not to break up work days, and we've tried to avoid weekends when we can. So, and we could do it on our regular hours, but just not on the same day. So we've got to decide, and they don't have to be the same day, and they don't have to be back to back. We can skip a few months between them, but we'll try to get information and take the next step. So thanks very much.
Thank you, Melody. So if you do have ideas, it'll take us a while to pull things together. So please, as ideas occur to you, things you'd really like to hear about and be able to discuss, please get them either to Jim or to Melody and myself, and we'll make sure that we incorporate them into the training sessions we're going to try to put together this year for everyone. So things are going to pop into your head, you know, after this meeting. So please share them with us so we can make sure we're really covering the ground that you all want us to cover.
What happens if you don't do 4 hours of training?
Oh, you just
Get an extra 5 years tacked on to your term on the planning board.
Uh-huh. Okay.
so
Thank you,
there.
Michael.
You're welcome. Okay, our next public hearing is Hannah Barrett, 317 Mill Road, site plan and special use permit. Once again, a continuance has been requested to continue this public hearing on April 19th at 6:40. Could I hear a motion to do so, please?
So moved, Kathy.
Thank you, Kathy.
Second.
Thank you, Edna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Aye.
Very good. And I see we're in time for our final public hearing tonight, KPH2 Management, T Court and Brindle Valley on the master plan application. We've also been asked if we could continue this public hearing until April 19th at 6:45 PM.
No, that's just on there for you to continue it if it needs to be continued, Michael.
Oh,
What?
okay.
Which one? The 650?
The KPH2.
Well, there's two. The 650 is the public hearing and the 655 is the new. I-
Right, and they're both on normally.
Oh,
I just put that there so when you continue the public hearing, that's when it'll be continued too. No,
oh, okay. I'm sorry, Gretchen. Thank you.
that's all right.
Okay, so I assume Mark, Howard, you all are here about the master plan.
Yes, we are, but we actually are asking to continue the master plan application to the next
Right.
hearing, so.
Okay. In that case, could I hear a motion, please, to continue the public hearing to April 19th at 6:45 PM?
So
So
moved.
Okay, Melody and Edna, first and a second?
Yes.
Very good. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Very good. Thank you. Okay. We do have a new application tonight. KPH2 Management, T Court, Brindle Valley. It's basically for tree restoration. It's part of the master plan, the suggestion, but given the need to actually work in the spring planting season to get this done, this is being presented to us as a separate application for us to review and go over. I know it's been discussed with us in the past as part of the overall master plan. And so I'm going to turn it over to Mark and to Howard to discuss exactly what they're proposing to do here.
Okay. Good evening, everybody. Yeah, this is a very simple and straightforward application. Within the master plan, we had proposed 2 areas of tree restoration based on the historic record. There's ample evidence throughout the tenure of the 3 Esters who own the property, showing trees in these locations. The map that you're looking, or the aerial photograph you're looking at, the rectangle area on the left was the original mansion location, and there were a number of shade trees around the mansion at that time. And then in the rectangle on the right, that's the main driveway coming off of River Road. And there was a fairly extensive alley of trees along that section. So we'd like to restore them. There were more historic images on this PDF. Jim, if you could just scroll through it quickly. We can get through that. This is an image of the mansion. There were 2 images going by you very fast, showing the trees that were around it. We have a map from 1906 that shows the locations of those trees, and we're attempting to put the trees as close as possible to that location. And you just saw skimming by you there the 1940 aerial photograph that also shows the trees in those exact same locations. So we know from about 1890 or so to at least 1940, these trees were extant. But you could see in that first existing conditions aerial photograph that most of those trees have since died and been removed. So if you can continue to the next plan.
Okay.
This one shows as it's loading slowly. Yeah, this shows in the little circles with dots and then the locations of the trees that we're proposing. In total, it's 50 trees. They range in caliper size from 8 inches to 15 inches. So these are significant. And if any of the board members do want to come to see the site before our next hearing, these are trees very similar in scale and species to the tree remediation that we did last year, just further down the driveway, so you can get a good view of the type of trees that we're looking for and what their scale is. That's pretty much it.
Howard, I think just one other item I think which is important to add is that there's only one area where the actual there'll be some soil changing, things of that sort. It's where a previous owner of the tea house put in a berm.
True. True.
along the road going up.
Yeah. Thank you for mentioning.
Trying to screen out the nursing home. And I believe it's your intent to remove the berm and the plants there
Mhm.
and to instead replace those plants with trees, basically premised upon the 1906 tree survey map that you have.
That one, actually, Jim, if you can go to the next, the last plan on that stuff.
Yep, just have to give me a second. This is it's a big file.
Sorry about that. Michael, just to clarify, the 1906 survey only shows the area around the original mansion house. So that would be the plan that you're looking at here currently. The next plan that shows the trees along the main driveway approach is off of that. It's not included in that 1906 plan.
Yeah.
So we're using
Right.
an etching from almost 1890, 1900 that looks down that road and shows the trees in that location, as well as we're using the 1940 aerial photograph.
Is that the one you showed earlier that comes from the history of Dutchess County?
Yes. Yeah, it's the county GIS website.
No.
Howard, these are all
We were
hardwood
talking-
trees as opposed to evergreens.
I think Melody, you were going to clarify. You were asking about the etching.
Yeah. Isn't that out of?
That came out of
one of the county. Pardon? That's out of one of the county.
I thought it was at the Rhinebeck Historic Society. But I have to clarify with Carrie about that. It came
No,
off the
I
video.
know the one. You showed it earlier and it shows that very strong LA
Yeah.
going down in the engraving. Yeah, I know where that comes from.
Okay.
It's that one
Yeah,
right
it's
there.
it's that one. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah. So in the red rectangle, you can clearly see the trees on both sides of the road.
Yep.
And these trees are hardwoods, Howard?
Yes. They're all maples, oaks, tulip trees. There's a catalpa in there as well. So they're deciduous trees.
Okay. Questions for the applicant?
Are the trees, Howard, typical of what would have been planted there historically?
Yeah. We're using that 1906 survey to get a sense of the species that they had on the property.
And they had catalpa then?
Yes, they did have catalpa in the 1906 one, and there's a very large catalpa tree actually still standing along the same area where we're planning to plant the trees. That tree is probably 120 years old.
Okay, great.
It's a beautiful specimen.
Thank you.
Any questions? Okay, well,
This is
somewhere
Michael.
here I have a resolution.
Michael,
Yes.
this is Jim. I had a quick comment or question. Howard, I took a look at it. I don't have any issues with what you're proposing to do. I think it makes sense. And obviously it's part of the master plan. It's more of a technicality. And we mentioned it earlier, is the berm removal. I didn't see
Yes.
any notation of that on any of the plans in terms of where the berm is, the fact that it was going to be moved, or what the new grading was. Did I miss that? Or
Yeah, I thought I had a note in the 4.1610 plan of where the location of the trees where the trees were going to be moved to. And then I only.
I
Yeah.
guess I was saying specifically the berm, like where the berm is and the new grading that was going to be shown, because we typically require that on the plans, that we show the
Okay.
proposed grading if you're taking the.
I can make sure you have that for the next. I can add that to the plan for the next hearing.
Yeah, or let me know if it's in here and I missed it. That'd be great. We just
No.
need to make sure-
I really just verbally described it because it's somewhat similar to what we did 2 years ago in removing the screening trees that were along the old Duffy property line.
Yeah, just since we have the plan coming in and that's discussed in there, I just think we need to show where that berm is and that new grading. And then if you think you need a silt fence around it, just show the detail of a silt fence that would be put up for the construction work. I think that should take care of it. You'll get a copy of my notes that say what that is.
Okay.
But otherwise, I think we're good. Thank you.
Any other comments or questions? Oh,
Michael,
I have a procedural. Yes.
Michael, this is Mark. I just wanted to
Yes.
make sure that in our, I was just going through our special permit application to make sure we included major excavation. For that,
Removal of the berm, Mark?
yes,
I don't believe you need it because this effort was submitted as a site plan and special use permit, right? So you don't need a specific special use permit for.
yeah, we actually,
I thought you did.
yeah, I did. I didn't
Yeah.
remember, just checked. So sorry to interrupt, Michael.
Yeah. No,
So
no,
if,
I thought it was also required, but we'll look into it further. We'll include it tonight, but we'll look into it further, Mark, just to verify that indeed that's also needed.
I
Okay.
do think,
I know there's
do
also the
thi-
special use.
I
Yes,
do
Phil.
think it's, so you've got time to get that in. But I do think it's needed, yeah.
I think it's already in the packet that Mark put together with Howard.
Oh, that's good, okay.
So
It
we already
is.
have it.
I just checked. It is.
Yeah.
All right, good, you're off the hook.
Oh, that was easy.
Yeah,
Well,
there.
Do I get is that?
you don't get too excited. We still have other things to discuss with you.
Okay, that's your one mulligan for the night, Mark.
Okay, all right.
Okay.
Michael, there's one more point
Yes.
I'd like to make, and it's something I think the board does need to consider. Due to, this is just how nature works, to order trees like this from a nursery, they're not things you buy off of a shelf, obviously. They're currently in the ground at the nurseries. And they have to be dug before the trees start to leaf out, because otherwise we have to stop digging until the leaves are fully hardened off. Digging them at that point in time, this causes too much of a threat to their viability. So given the timing of the next hearing, we will have to have these trees dug and delivered. So I would just like the board to be aware that would have to be part of this process. We would have to be able to receive delivery of the trees before the approval occurs next month. We will not dig the trees. We will not do anything in the ground. We will simply nursery them on the property at that time, so long as it's acceptable to you.
Well, it's always a risk for you. I don't anticipate any problems with getting approval at, I'd list me on April 19th for the public hearing at that time. I don't anticipate any problems, but once again, I can't guarantee anything until
Sure.
board votes. I mean, yeah, if you have to dig the trees and have them sitting on the property, that's, I don't think that that's something we would object to, but I can't guarantee the approval, although I don't see any reason why it won't come to pass, but it's not a guarantee I can make.
Sure, I understand that.
Okay. All righty. Well, here's the procedural resolution. The Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board hereby acts as follows in the application by T-Corp, KPH2 Management for site plan and special use permit under Town Code Chapter 125-65 and 125-72 respectively for driveway tree restoration within the HP 20 Historic Preservation Zoning District. We accept the application and supporting documents as adequate for further review by the Planning Board, its advisors, and the public, and we classify the proposed action as a type 2 under seeker. We are scheduling a public hearing on the application for April 19th at 6:50 and direct the clerk to undertake or otherwise cause noticing and posting thereof. We delegate planning board members who would like to do the site visit.
I'll go, Michael.
Joe?
Yes.
And I'll go as well. Haven't been there in a while. To conduct a field visit to the project site and report their observations at the time of public hearing and request said planning board members to coordinate with the CAB, WAC, and HAPAC on site visit scheduling. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 9, refers the application to the Conservation Advisory Board for review and written comment concerning environmental factors. In accordance with Town Code Chapter 118, we refer the application to the Waterfront Advisory Committee for review and written comment concerning consistency with the LWRP. And in accordance with Town Code Chapter 125, Section 12562, we refer the application to the HAPAC for review and written comment concerning historic and/or archaeological elements. And in accordance with the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development, 239 Planning Zoning Referral, refer to the Dutchess County Department of Planning and Development for review. and we authorize without prejudice to any information or comment that may be presented at the public hearing or may arise based on both the above cited field visit and referral, preparation of a working draft of an approvals resolution for the planning board's consideration on April 19th or as may be later timely. Could I hear a motion to approve, please?
So moved, Melody.
Thank you, Melody. Second?
Don,
Second, Elise.
Thank you, Delise. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
aye.
Very
Hey,
good.
Mike, I would also love to go and see it if possible. Just,
I don't see why not.
you don't have to schedule around me, but if it's available, I'd love to come and see it too.
The
Well,
other
I
thing,
think Howard offered I
The
think
other
Howard
thing-
offered an opportunity for anyone who wants to go up, to coordinate. But you can certainly come with us if if you like, you'd be more than welcome.
other-
Michael,
just so I can go back a minute, the other thing we talked about was organizing a site visit of the entire board at some point as we move through,
Yes,
so that they can get an overview of the entire property project. And I'm not discouraging you, Delise, but I mean, the idea is you need to see all parts of this. And
Exactly.
that is yet to be scheduled. But I would encourage us to get back to that with Mark and Howard and everyone as the weather warms up. We need to be talking about how we can get out there, and it will take some time, as you may imagine. It's a big property and there's a lot of components, so we haven't lost sight of that. And I would just say, let's talk internally about how we make that happen.
sorry.
No, it's okay.
And more importantly, Melody, there's no one currently on the preservation committee that has ever been on this property except
Okay.
for me. And, I don't need to go again, but that committee in its entirety needs to get there as soon as possible. So if Mark or Howard or somebody can help to make that possible for them, that's a good idea.
So
Yeah,
just-
thanks, Kathy. And I found that, for in order to be kind to Mark and Howard and everybody, we need to coordinate it so that we're doing it as much as we can with one visit. Otherwise, we'll just guys up.
I understand that. I just am pushing
No.
for earlier rather than a later date, because I know that for the committee, there is not an unreasonable amount of work there. Okay, Mark, thank you.
I'm agreeing with you.
I'd also like to add that, I don't mind breaking this into 2 visits if that makes it easier for the board. We're up there often.
I think you need to accommodate the necessary site visits for this particular project of the tree replacement. And then we need to be communicating about how we schedule follow-up site visit, including as many people as need to be there, and especially the HAPAC committee, who will be heavily involved in the review of this sooner rather than later. Because we've all received documents, everybody's looking at them. So the sooner they can get eyes on the ground, the better.
Yeah, we need to, my goal is like getting some context to what we're looking at on paper, right? So that's great.
Well, and the committee doesn't have anything. The only it hasn't been referred to the committee yet.
Okay.
Nope, that's gonna happen. That'll happen tonight.
Yeah, no, I know that, but because it hasn't, I just want you guys to understand so you can keep moving in the way that you want to be able to keep moving, and nothing is problematic.
Thank you.
Thank you. The last thing I'll say. You hope.
okay, we have a resolution. We have a resolution with a motion and a second. Any further discussion? All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Very good. Okay, Mark, Howard, I'll coordinate with Joe and with Delise, and we'll see if we can't get out there on a nice sunny day.
Okay, and Michael, with regard to coordination with HAPAC, what's the best way for me to do that? Is it communication with Kathy?
No, I think you need to be coordinating with Jim
Okay,
for an enlarged site visit that includes all planning board members and HAPAC. I wouldn't go direct, I wouldn't go solely to APAC. I would include them in a
Okay,
visit with all planning board members. So I would encourage you, because I don't think Michael and I want to do this, I'd encourage you to coordinate with Jim, who can do some kind of doodle poll about what's best, and, you know, he can decide what's available and we can all vote on it and figure out when we can come. And if we have to break it into two groups because of, you know, schedules and other things, we'll do that. We just, you know, it gets tiresome for you and others to just keep meeting one or two people at a time. That could take a long time.
so I just want to be clear though. So is it just, Melody, is it just, and Michael and the board, is it, so we have two projects, right? So it's the master plan and also tree restoration.
The tree restoration right now, as it stands, was Joe, Michael, and Elise.
So for example, does it refer to the CAB and also to APAC for, that allows them to attend the meeting also?
It does, it
Yes.
does.
All right,
It does, but that referral process will go the way it always has. Michael,
Okay.
you guys will work with them. The other one, the bigger site visit, we're trying to get everybody together at once to talk with you, would be something we'll organize separately. That's less of a priority than getting this one out for the tree work. We need to get that one done ASAP.
Right.
Except, I know I said I wouldn't say anything else, but I do know that there will be members of the committee. Howard, where are you? I don't see you, but that will be interested in the landscape issues and tree restoration and all of that. So to the extent that we can quickly share all this with them, and if they need to go quickly, so it moves quickly.
Well, then what we'll
Thank you.
do, Kathy, is we will refer this tree replacement project to your committee, and you can designate who will attend the site visit specific to this particular project.
Well done. Exactly.
All
Thank
right.
you.
Done.
Yeah, Kathy, let me know who you.
I will.
So I
I
can
will.
coordinate with them.
And the good news for you is it
Okay.
won't be me.
Yeah, you said you
Oh.
were going to talk again.
Oh,
Yeah.
then I'm not going. All right, there's one thing that has been added to the agenda, and unfortunately, I forgot to mention it under our opening remarks. It's number of our largest projects, the KPH2 Tea House, the Hudson Valley Rhinebeck Rock Ledge, and Mensch Grassmere. You know, three of our largest projects have been underway and under review prior to the formation of our Historic Archaeological Preservation Advisory Committee. So what we would like to do tonight is formally refer those three projects to that committee for their review and comments. And basically we have I think this is a resolution that I can read to you. The
Yes.
Town of Rhinebeck Planning Board, upon finding projects initiated prior to the incorporation of the Historic and Archaeological Preservation Advisory Committee, and thus not having formally referred said projects to APAC, therefore hereby refers the following projects to APAC for review and written comment concerning historic and or archaeological elements in accordance with Town Code Chapter 125, Section 125-62.1, Point B, 2G1. That's a lot of stuff. Okay, and it's Tea House Astor Courts, Brindlebrook, KPH2. It's Hudson Valley Rhinebeck, which is Rock Ledge, and it's Mensch Grassmere, which is the Grassmere Farm Development. Could I hear a motion to approve this resolution to refer those three projects officially to APAC?
So moved, Melody.
Thank you, Melody. Second?
Second, Joe.
Thank you, Joe. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Very good. All right. We have one ZVA referral. It's Solon on Way Road. Okay, rear yard setback for a pool. This was a project that was before us a while ago for the house. Have all of you had a chance to read through Jim's notes on this? Anyone who's not had a chance to do so? Okay, assuming you've all seen it. Jim, do you have sort of a map or a depiction of of sort of the whole property and how it bumps? Yeah, yeah. And I believe the pool is that down in that low corner where that apple storage shed used to be. Is that or is that the old apple storage shed? Oh, okay. Thank you. That is, I'm looking at the wrong place. Okay.
Michael, I believe it's, if you can see my cursor, it's kind of back where the
Yes,
cursor
yes.
is here, at the back property line.
Right.
And
I was
this
looking at the
long,
wrong place as usual.
this long box here, this is the existing residence. And so it would be back in this area. And there's a picture I can show as well. But this is the Stephanopoulos property that surrounds the applicant's property here in the Solon property.
Okay. And so I recall it was a rather constrained property.
Yes, it is.
Oh, very.
If you look at this line, the line right here just past 190, I think is the 100-foot wetland setback, the buffer. So it comes right up to the edge.
Okay.
And then this is what they have and the Photoshop of what they're proposing.
Okay. So it really is right up against their neighbor's property.
Why? Why is that desired?
Well, the property itself didn't offer an awful lot of opportunities for construction when they came before us to put in the house. That was one of the issues that we had.
And really the only other place they can put it, because they have a well and gas here, would be essentially in the front yard. It'd be in this open area up in here.
But it could be closer to the house, right? Rather than right up against the property line.
Yeah, probably. Let me go back to it. Where'd it go?
This is the long, modern black house on Way Road.
Yes.
Yeah.
Jim, what was your point in including the comment that development is happening, you know, in pieces rather than plans being put together at one time? How do you think that should affect our view?
I don't know that it necessarily affects this pool per se, but as I noted before, and we've had discussions on it, it seems like a lot of sites we're looking at in town are increasingly constrained. They're getting tougher and tougher to build on, and then tougher and tougher to put accessory structures and things on. And so, you know, this one's come in and they want to put in a pool, and we can all understand that. But in order for them to do it on a constrained lot, they need to get a variance, and that's becoming kind of commonplace. And so my only comment is that this just kind of keeps happening. I don't know that there's necessarily a way to, you know, to avoid it, but it's becoming a more common issue, at least in the 2 years I've been here. We're just seeing more and more of this, and it isn't in itself an issue, and not necessarily as much with this one, but I do get concerned over time that, you know, it's going to be a pool here, and then it'll be an accessory shed there, and then it might be something else somewhere else. And on these constrained lots, it just gets tougher and tougher, and the variances may get, you know, they may become more increasingly, you know, difficult. I mean, this is a large lot, but it's still pretty constrained. So that was kind of my only, you know, my reason for putting it in there is just to kind of bring it up again and keep it in the, you know, the front of our minds as this goes on, to just assess them individually, but then see if there is a problem, if there's something we need to consider, or, you know, just take into consideration when we're reviewing these.
Hey, Jim, like per your notes though, if the setback was 30 feet, they would be okay. It's at 8 now, right? That's the issue. I'm just looking at the drawing, and it seems like the pool could be closer to the house.
I believe so.
I think that's what Edna was referring to earlier.
Right. So it's
are close to a patio. I mean, it's not an unusual situation. In fact, some people prefer it.
Right.
And I understand we have to have sort of like, you know, general rules that apply to everybody, but in particular, from what I can see from this house, the neighboring property is incredibly large and rural. Like there's nothing that would infringe in any way on the neighbor, just in regards to a variance if it was approved.
Well, at the moment.
At the moment, but they may be coming in for subdivision. And I think I put that in my notes. If I didn't, I meant to. They did come in and discuss a potential subdivision. So, so this one has a potential, but even if it didn't, we still have to remember there is the potential for it to be subdivided, and just kind of keep that in mind.
And that would be very difficult for us to make that kind of exception without knowing what the future of adjacent property is.
Right. Yeah.
Would it be reasonable to include in a recommendation to the Zoning Board of Appeals that they ask the applicant to consider moving the pool closer to the house, or to explain why it cannot be moved closer to the house, as it obviously is in a position where, should the land be subdivided, and you can see from the land surrounding, there's not a lot of trees or anything like that. It would be, very much within the view shed of a neighbor, and possibly something a little closer to the applicant's house would also give them an opportunity to possibly do some screening around it, which would be very difficult to do right now. And it will be very in its present location. Does that make sense?
Well, I think the additional comments about screening from neighbors are important to include.
I like that idea. I move that we do that.
Okay.
Of course,
Jen-
there's always the possibility of tinkering with the size of the pool as well.
Yeah.
I'm not,
Jen-
that's ideal, but that is another option for the applicant to consider.
So I think sort of at least the three things I've just heard that we would like the ZBA to request of the applicant to consider is moving the pool closer to the house, possibly tinkering with the size of the pool, and to require a little bit more screening in the event that, should the land be subdivided, or should the owner of the property build somewhere right in that area on their own property, would give some screening of the pool from the neighbors. Those are the three things that I've heard so far, I think. that we would-
Michael, I have a question. I mean, maybe it's just because we're only seeing very preliminary things, but we're not seeing anything about a pool enclosure, right?
There is a fence proposed. So I noted, they said that there's nothing visible, but they are proposing a fence that would go around it, attached to the house, I believe, and then the doors will be alarmed.
Oh,
there's no-
okay. Well, that is probably very important information to nail down as we move forward. I'm always worried about, I don't know, I'm just always worried about the ones that the enclosure goes around the pool and is connected to the house and requires on alarm systems to alert people when kids leave the house and go into the pool area without a fence. Maybe I'm just being paranoid, but
No, that's a good point.
I mean, we dealt with this with several applications, and, I'm just old school, and I worry that if the power goes out and the systems go down, that, kids are in jeopardy. And
Well,
people-
Sadly, it
people-
does happen.
Yeah, well, I mean, people more technically savvy than I can convince me otherwise, but we don't see right here, we're not looking at how they're proposing. And that has a visual aspect to it in terms of screening as well from the neighbors. We don't know what the fence is going to look like.
It's a 4-foot cedar split rail fence with galvanized steel wire on it, which seems to be a pretty common installation in the town. So I think it'll be, essentially kind of a continuation of what they have in a way.
Okay.
On the back of the lot there. But I
Alright.
agree with you, Melody, but that, we don't get into the building code part of it like that per se, but that's why when they come into us, in particular for site plan, I've been requesting that they have a note saying that it adheres to New York State rules for pool enclosures.
Okay. Good.
Beyond that, I don't, it goes to the building department, I think, at that point. But I want to make sure that we ensure that it is a legal structure, a legal enclosure.
And that it's aesthetically acceptable if they're close by neighbors.
So it sounds like there are three comments you want me to send back that would replace the two that I'd written there. It's not a typical response. We'll ask for the pool to be looked at to be moved closer to the house, screening from the adjacent property, and even consider a smaller pool if that's necessary to reduce the variance.
Yeah,
I have one additional question. When I look at this drawing, there is no seating area depicted around this pool. It's like what you're seeing is the edge of the pool and grass comes up to it. And I think it's important to know whether that is truly what is intended. Pools often have, patio areas around them and people sit there after they have been swimming. So,
true.
is this an actual picture of what it would look like in the ground or not?
It's a good question, Edna. Another question, do we have depicted here where the mechanicals for the pool are going to be?
No, they're not.
Okay.
They're not shown on the plan either. So there are two questions we can ask.
I guess another thing is the filtration system such that they have to backwash, and if so, where's that water intended to go? I know new filters, new ways of doing this, they don't do that anymore.
I believe I've read this one wouldn't do that, but I don't remember for sure.
Okay.
I have to double check that.
But I think you've pretty well covered it for us, Jim, the elements. Does anyone else have anything they'd like to add to the comments that we're submitting to the zoning board of appeals to look at as they consider this variance application? Are those three the ones that we think are the ones that really they should be looking at? Okay, hearing nothing extra, could I hear a motion to approve sending those three recommendations on to the ZBA, along with, I think, the normal, and for them to consider the comments of public at the public hearing? Because I think if there are neighbors around there, they may have some comments they wish to make.
So moved, Michael.
Thank you, Edna. Second?
Second, Sean.
Thank you, Sean. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
I,
Very good. Thank you. We now have our final element, our three referrals from the zoning enforcement officer as to whether applications she has reviewed need to go to the our historic archaeological preservation advisory committee. I don't know that I'm all that familiar with these. Let me see here if we can get a handle on them.
I'm here and I can certainly speak to this first one. I'm just trying to replace my roof.
Aha, okay.
Michael, we were sent two pictures. I can put them up on the screen here so everyone can see.
Okay, thank you.
That's the house. That's the house with the roof at present. It's a shingle roof. They don't make those particular kinds of shingles anymore, but you'll see the next picture is just a sample of the new shingles, which are similar in color, modern shingles. The only difference.
What is the age of the house?
The age of the building is about 120 years old. The house was a barn that was converted into a residence in the 1970s.
Can we go back to the earlier structure or picture, Jim? I'm sorry.
Yep. Second.
So the lower part of this structure dates from when? The stone?
Oh, as far as I know, I mean, the size of the structure, I do not believe was altered when it was converted. The stone has some areas that are newer if you look at the details, but the stone should date from around 1900. The stone is not the real foundation of the building anymore, but the stonework is probably the original foundation of the building.
Well, I guess to me, that lower level with the windows and the stonework looks earlier than what you're saying. So that may be why the question has arisen.
Earlier than 1900?
Without other documentation, I would say it looks earlier. I'm not disputing you, but I'm asking what documentation we have that says that's from 1900.
Right. So I mean, I recently bought the house. I can tell you that that was the, you know, in whatever documentation there was for the property, that was the date used. There is a fake cornerstone on the south side of the house that says 1900. That is definitely not original. Probably was put there by the people who did the conversion in the 70s. So I'm not taking that as documentation, but I'm taking that as the person who I think did the conversion certainly seemed to think the building was from 1900, but I can't ascertain that one way or the other.
The only thing I would add is Wurtemberg Road is one of the earliest settlement areas in the town, going back to the early part of the 18th century. And without being on the property, without knowing anything more than what I'm looking at, that type of construction looks earlier to me than 1900. And that's why.
Two things. So actually, you want to turn my camera on? I'm here. I won't let me turn my camera on. I might as well, we can see each other. It looks like the administrator of the Zoom needs to start video. Great. Okay, awesome. Much better. Okay, so explain to me how I understand that, and explain to me how that connects with the roof. The roof is in really bad shape and does really need to be replaced.
I do understand that. I'm just suggesting that since this is, I don't expect this to be onerous, but I think whatever changes would be made to anything that, at this point, let's just say it might be older and it might have more historic significance. So I just think the next step would be just to let the HAPAC committee take a look at that and then have some opportunity to comment on the new style of roof that goes on. I don't think it precludes you in any way from moving ahead. They might just have some comments on what is the best course forward. Kathy,
Okay, sorry, go on.
No, go ahead, Eric. It's Kathy Hammer. I'm also on the HAPAC committee, so let me know what you were about to say, and then I'll concur with what Melody is saying. But honestly, I don't expect it to be problematic for you.
Yeah, I'm just curious what the time frame is. To be completely transparent, my home insurance provider has canceled my insurance because they said my roof needs to be replaced. So yeah, I would like to know kind of what the expected time frame, or at least when I would know if I have to change the plan here. Yeah, I have no idea what the process looks like.
Eric,
go ahead, Kathy.
I was just going to say, if we can agree to refer this to the committee, I'll do it tomorrow. I'll deal with it tomorrow.
Okay.
Okay.
And then I assume that there's a subsequent committee meeting that would need to get like what is the overall time frame then look like?
We have typically been sharing the information about an application online with each member of the committee and ask for input.
Great.
And so since our first formal committee meeting isn't until April, my preference here, unless Jim or someone else tells me otherwise, would be to do just that tomorrow. And you know, if there are questions or issues, we would confer with you.
Okay, great.
I also think, Kathy, you have the opportunity, if need be, to expedite this, to call a special meeting of the HAPAC committee, convene and make a decision. I agree with you. I don't think that the relationship between the roof and the rest of the structure will derail this.
No.
I suspect anything that needs to happen will happen pretty easily. I can tell by looking at this, you have roof problems. But because of the location in the town and what I'm seeing, I'm actually happy to tell you, I think you have a building that has more age to it than you might have imagined. And I hope you that.
It's a lovely home. I certainly love it. There's no doubt about that. So that's great.
So we'll, you know, I would just like to go on record as saying the HAPAC committee's been working diligently. They were formed and then COVID hit, and, you know, it hasn't been easy to get all the rhythms in place, but Kathy's, offering up an expedited way to look at this. And I think that's terrific. And, we'll figure out how to do this and allow you to do what you need to do to protect this.
Yeah, yep, exactly. Thank you. Yeah, and you guys are welcome to come over anytime.
Thank you.
Thanks.
So if we can do this expeditiously, this review, do you have a roofer signed up yet, a date of
I
when they'll
do.
be able to start work?
The roofer was ready to start. He could start this week, but obviously now he can't start this week. So you know how it is, like when you lose your place in the queue, you don't know when you come back in the queue, but as far as I know, he's ready to go.
It's only Monday, Eric.
Yeah.
Trust
So
Kathy.
Kathy,
Yes,
if you can expedite this, I'll ask for
I will.
a resolution.
I don't want his roof to fall in.
To refer this to HAPAC for expedited review for this roof replacement and how it could, any impact it might have upon the historic structure.
So moved,
How's that
Melody.
sound?
Sounds beautiful.
Second?
Second.
Second? Thank you, Kathy. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. We'll be in
Any
touch, Eric.
opposed?
All right, thank you so much. I appreciate it.
Okay, our next referrals for a sign permit, I believe this is for the service station up by the bridge approach.
Yes, it is.
As I recall, and someone might remember something I don't ever remember when that thing was being redone and rebuilt. I don't believe it ever came before the planning board.
Never did, never did.
What happened there was therefore never reviewed and never approved.
Right.
So at this point, I think that with that in mind, I think that a thorough look at the overall signage of that property needs to be looked at, since it's never been looked at and never been approved. I don't really see how we could make any other recommendation in terms of signage.
But wouldn't
since we
we
don't know
have
what the
had
other
to,
signage is there.
wouldn't we have had to look at the overall transformation of the property?
Yes, we should have, absolutely, but it never came to us.
So
and
how
it
do
just
we
happened.
how do we go back to that, or don't we?
Well, we
I
can
don't know.
review.
I'm
Sorry, go ahead, Michael. Go ahead,
I was
Michael.
just gonna say, honestly, Melody, I don't really know how we would do that at this point in time. Because they've, had the building permit, they've had the CO and all that.
Oh,
I think to try and go back at this point,
okay.
probably this thing slipped through and it should have never happened. But it did, and it was a couple of years ago. But
Didn't
clearly
it
the
go from,
signage.
didn't it go from a one-story building to a two-story building?
I believe it did. But the sign has been referred to us, and the fact that
Okay.
there is no history of signage being reviewed by the planning board or looked at, I think that we would be remiss if not asking for a overall sign plan for the entire property. Because it's
I agree.
entirely possible that what they're proposing to do would put them in violation of the existing zoning law for signage, and in which case they would need to make some adjustments. So that's just my feeling.
No, I
Other
agree.
members of the planning board like to chime in.
So Michael, they did come in, boy, it's probably 6-8 months ago now, for a sign. They wanted to put a sign on the canopy for the gas tanks, and that is not permitted in the town at all. So at that time, we essentially referred it back to the zoning administrator the same way you're proposing now, which is that sign's not permitted, and we really need to see an entire sign package in order to understand whether or not this is consistent with the code. We've got this one now. We don't see the other signs. It did say there was one other one on the site, but we didn't get the details on that one. I think this sign is too big based on what the code says. I don't think it's based on the frontage of the building, and I don't think the building is big enough to provide a 6-foot long sign. So essentially, it's the same referral again, that we need more information before we can make a recommendation, both for this sign and, as you said, I think the entire sign package to make sure it's consistent with the code. Kind of the same situation again, but with a different sign.
I have an additional thought, and that is it's very difficult to think about a sign out of context. I think that we need to see photographs or something of the entire structure,
Right.
signage appended, so that we can, understand.
Kind
That's
of
a
in
good point.
context of the overall site plan.
Yeah, which we
Sure,
never
photo
saw
rendering.
before. Yeah, I think we need to see elevations of the building and exactly what they're proposing for the signage in terms of the size on the building and the different placements of it. I
Agreed.
think that's a good point. So Jim, are you getting all this down?
Yes, and as I mentioned earlier, the resolutions are draft, so we will we will work this one up a little bit. But essentially, we are stating that the planning board is requesting additional information before they can make a referral recommendation, looking for the full sign package to review, as well as seeing the sign actually in the context of the building through something like a photo rendering, using an elevated model, something like that, so you can see it in context.
Well, I'd like to see the entire operation. In other words, I want to see the building, the gas things, as I would see it as I were to drive by.
Okay, so the design of the entire site.
Yeah.
Okay.
Because the signs are part of that.
Any other thoughts or comments, things that we should have in this recommendation to the zoning enforcement officer?
No.
Is everyone comfortable with the recommendations that we're sending to the zoning enforcement officer?
I am.
Okay. Okay, could I hear a motion to approve the recommendations that we're proposing to send to the zoning enforcement officer?
So moved, Melody.
Second, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. Any further discussion? Okay, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Okay. We have one more referral from the zoning enforcement officer, and once again, it's another sign permit. It's for the market in Rhinecliff. I know there's been a good deal of discussion about some of the physical aspects of it, its location. Does it project from the building? It seems to project more from the corner.
So,
Jim, I know
So-
you had a number of thoughts about this.
yes, I was just gonna say, so in my memo, it was a lengthy write-up, but mainly going back, letting you know what the history was on this. The market came in for an approval that included a sign package. That one came in a couple times and then essentially got conditional approval, I guess you call it, from the planning board for a sign, but that was conditioned on making sure that the sign was sized properly and met the code requirements. Now, the sign has changed. It was originally a circular sign. Now it's a square sign. I do believe, based on my review, that it meets the sign size requirements. And there are notations of what the sign size is in the narrative. But again, the code requires, as we saw in the last application we just looked at for El Jamel, the renderings here are supposed to, by code, show the distances, the size of the sign, the size of how far it projects from the wall, things like that, which has been discussed in the past. And really, we need that information in order to be able to be sure that this drawing, when we did get the drawing, is a scale drawing and shows that all meets code. Again, I think the sign itself meets the code. I'm not sure about how far it projects out from the wall. Based on the code, it's supposed to be 9 inches. I don't think we're going to meet that, but again, I think if that information is provided on the renderings themselves, then we would know, more clearly what's going on and whether or not it does meet the code. So I had a couple comments in there that the drawings really need to become scaled plans, showing the dimensions of the sign, the pole length, the distance from the face of the sign to the building, distance from the sidewalk to the bottom of the sign, which we did actually see in a past version of this. Sign lettering coverage dimensions, things like that, which again, were in a previous application, but all that should be in this one. We did discuss the fact the sign was on the principal facade previously, but I guess, we can still discuss that if we want to. And again, I think it projects further from the building than the 9 inches that's permitted by code. I also think a notation needs to be put on here that if the sign does stay the way it is, that it's going to be permanently mounted so that it doesn't swing. There was a note that it would be affixed to the pole, not necessarily indicating that it definitely would not swing, and that is a specific requirement in the code. So really, I think it comes down to, we need a little bit more information on here in order to be able to be sure that it does meet all the code requirements, particularly that projection distance. But that's kind of where things stand from my review.
Okay, thank you, Jim.
Yep.
Other comments or questions from members of the planning board on this one?
Assuming that all of the notations are in place and that it meets code, I like it. I don't know where you'd put it on the building. It looks very French. I think they should put potted flowers out in front.
I have just, I guess, a logistical question. If we see an application as it comes in, is there a way to inform the applicant before the meeting that, this is what's missing, so that it's a more complete application at the time of the meeting?
Good question.
Elise, can I answer that? This is Patricia.
Sure.
Yes.
Well-
So I am aware that I need to submit a scale drawing. The thing is that I have had to submit, I don't know, like 6 different applications at this point to edit to meet the requirements and the feedback. So at this point, I don't want to pay for a scale drawing every time until I get some clarity on where the sign can go and how big it can be. And then I will pay for a scale drawing to be done for a final review. But at this point, I would have paid for multiple scale drawings to be considered and then get feedback and then have to go back and pay for them to be redrawn with the feedback included. So I'm really hoping that I can get all of the feedback that is needed so that I can have a scale drawing then be submitted that is satisfactory. But the most recent feedback that I've received from the zoning administrator in January is now that I can't have a projecting sign at all, which nobody has mentioned here now. So I don't want to pay to have a scale drawing done on this projecting sign and then submit it and then be told that I'm not allowed to have a projecting sign after all.
Okay, I certainly can understand that. I think reading Jim's comment number 2 in this and what the discussion was that the placement of the sign is not something that the planning board or that Jim certainly seemed to feel
Right.
was going to be a problem, although it might be a little bit further out from the building and it has to certainly just be firmly attached to the pole so that it doesn't swing. I think the main question basically was the distance from the bottom of the sign to the sidewalk was, I think, the primary concern.
That was the primary concern.
I
at
don't
the
know, Jim, correct me if I'm wrong here.
That was the way I left our last meeting, yes, that the sign was slightly too large and that the concern was the distance between the bottom of the sign and the sidewalk. However, the letter I received from the zoning administrator did not indicate any of those concerns. And the concern was that flat out a projecting sign was not permitted in the Rhinecliff Business District and that I would need to convert the application to a wall-mounted sign.
So
Did we receive
So-
that?
I don't believe we received that.
I don't recall seeing that. It sounds to me like,
I don't.
I don't know. I
it
mean,
was in an updated determination letter.
Sorry, guys.
That went-
Sorry.
It was in the determination letter that went with, I guess, the current application that Patricia submitted right here that says, if you can see my cursor, the town of
Yeah, I
Rhinebeck
do.
design standards indicate that it be wall mounted. So we had talked about this with the original sign, whether or not it was considered to be on the principal facade, which was the discussion that we had. And we I think deemed at that time that it was on the principal facade. It is a projecting sign but obviously Michelle, as a zoning administrator, makes determinations of those types of things too. So I don't know.
Can one get a variance for that?
why exactly is this referred to us tonight?
I was just going to ask the same question.
I was
No,
asking that question as well.
So when we approved the sign package originally, it was contingent on the sign, being made so that it was to size and to code. But we did generally approve the sign at that time. I guess it was a circular or oval sign. I think it was a circular sign. Just stating that we needed that. I missed the term on it. We need a scaled plan, submitted to make sure that everything met code. Why it came back to us now, maybe because it's a square and not a circle anymore. I'm not entirely sure.
But that
But-
circle was a projecting sign, so if the projection was an issue, then why was it not noted back then?
It wasn't seen as an issue by the planning board at the time, right? Because we talked about whether or not it was on the principal facade. That was the discussion we had.
I
But
don't,
this is, yeah.
I'm just not feeling that the issue of projecting or non-projecting, attached to the building, not attached to the building is a decision we're enabled to make.
It seems that the zoning administrators already made the decision in this letter, and obviously we
is-
cannot overrule the zoning administrator
I
on
gotta
the
find, I
the
gotta find
location of
it
the sign.
buried in here. Where is that?
The
So
sign-
she's saying it's gotta be wall mounted.
Apparently, yes.
Yes.
I'd like to mention that there is a projecting sign about 20 feet down the sidewalk that was installed about 4.5 years ago.
Yeah,
Well, I
correct.
mean, that could be, but we're now dealing with this determination from the zoning administrator, which says it has to be wall mounted. So why are we even looking at a sign that isn't wall mounted? Not you, Patricia. I'm not asking you that question. I'm asking us internally.
I don't know. I think it's a situation where I don't see that we can make a recommendation since it's not supposed to be a projecting sign according to the zoning administrator, the zoning enforcement officer. Therefore, we would have to be looking at a sign that was on the facade of the building for
Right.
us to recommend whether or not we felt that it was appropriate for this structure, but it's not on the side of the building.
Right.
Well,
I honestly don't know what we
couldn't
can.
couldn't we also consider that were it on the side of the building, it would be less in keeping with the building? And do we have any advice for this poor woman who has been, walked around the block a few times? Like, should she seek an interpretation from the zoning board of appeals?
So, I mean, so this is referred to us, right? It's a referral to the planning board for comment, but the permit is put out by Michelle. So my assumption was that we were, looking at it to be sure that it was consistent with what we need in order for the planning board to be able to refer it back saying it's okay. And that really came down to, as I said before, just getting a scaled plan. The element of it being wall mounted or not is new. That's different than what we've looked at before in the past. I think that, as Michael said, I think that's something Michelle has determined that is within the zoning administrator realm, not necessarily the planning board realm at this point. It's a little bit of a gray area maybe, but the planning board had already generally approved, the concept. It just needed it to be scaled and make sure that it met it. And the planning board felt that it was on the principal facade, which met the terms of the code. But again, I think this is, I don't know, difference of opinion between the planning board and Michelle. I'm not sure, but I'm not sure, Michael, that there's much we can do about that comment other than refer back however the planning board feels is you'd like to refer back.
Yeah,
I don't know.
think that, we're not in a position to make a recommendation because according to the zoning enforcement officer, the zoning administrator, the sign is not legally positioned, although I think I prefer the projection sign myself, but it's not legally positioned so that it's not something that we can give a recommendation on.
But we could concur that the design and the size of the sign is appropriate to the building.
We could certainly do that.
I mean, we can say that from a design perspective, from an aesthetic perspective, we don't have an issue, but the zoning administrator needs to resolve the positioning of the sign.
Would the planning board be comfortable suggesting that we do not aesthetically find the projecting sign to be objectionable?
In fact, we prefer it.
Yeah, I think as much positive or just good information we can give back to Michelle just to stop this circle that Patricia's been in would be very helpful.
I like that idea.
Well,
I think
also,
Melody Melody's suggestion that we find the sign to be attractive, size to be appropriate. We also feel that aesthetically, its positioning as a projecting sign from the side of the building would be the optimal aesthetic choice. Does that sound about right?
Well, I agree.
Yeah.
This building is at the confluence of two streets. So I understand why it's positioned at the angle that it is.
I,
If Michelle feels that this must be wall mounted, that would then require a variance to move forward. Do we want to recommend that, because you're recommending you prefer the design size and the projecting sign as is, that if she were to require it to be wall mounted and Patricia went for a variance, the planning board would have a
Approve
comment
it.
on that
Oh.
being submitted as a variance?
we would recommend that the variance be granted.
So do we want to include a little language to that effect? That if
Yes, I do.
if that was necessary?
I would agree
Yes.
because otherwise you'd have to have two signs mounted on two elevations of the building to give the same information, and that seems excessive. This seems much more reasonable to me.
I also don't think putting it on the facade of the building would be terribly attractive.
No,
Well, it's all window front. There's not really a appropriate location for a non-projecting sign.
No, there really isn't.
no,
And
I think we understand that.
if you'll go back to our very first meeting, there was discussion over which side was actually the primary facade, and it didn't seem like there was any agreement made on what
No.
that actually was. So we would just be going down that rabbit hole again as well.
Right.
That is
Are
why
we,
into the projecting sign on the corner was so that there was not a determination between the primary and the secondary facades of the building.
Yeah, and you only have one sign now, so it's not an issue. That determination was just because I think you're proposing two initially, and that just determined which one could be sized where. But that's not an issue anymore either. But I think if the planning board is comfortable stating that if a variance were to be required, you'd support it, that might at least, if Patricia wants to go the variance route, move things along so you don't have to come back again. I mean, it will come back to us from the ZBA, but it would at least support that position moving forward, and in a discussion with Michelle, or at least in your recommendation.
I think that's what we want to do, Jim.
No,
Is
I'm
there
not
any-
gonna, I'm not going to add to the confusion of all of this, but I keep looking at this and wonder, has anybody ever considered a triangular sign? Is there anything coming off the corner of a building that's triangular that works in two directions? Not demanding it. I'm just thinking like out loud.
I think in the zoning, it specifically says it cannot be a three-dimensional sign. It has to. be-
Okay, all right, that's the answer. Thank you.
is there anything else that we could, on our side, I guess, approve regarding, like, we agree with this as long as it's within 9 inches off the building? Can we put language like that in there just to try to, is there any way to streamline this?
Well, I mean, we always state that it needs to meet the code standards. I mean, that's a given.
Okay.
Well, I think suggest that it needs to meet the code standards for a projecting sign. And we recommend that if a variance is needed for projecting sign in the Rhine Cliff Business District for this sign, the planning board would support that application to the zoning board of appeals.
Right. I think we need to stick with the dimensions that are certified in the law.
Yeah.
Okay, so generally, I think we're if everyone is in general agreement, we're sending back a referral that the planning board prefers the design and size, essentially as proposed, in favor of the projecting sign. Actually prefer it as an aesthetic choice, particularly given that it's a corner building. If a variance was needed, based on the discussion that it be wall mounted, the planning board would be supportive of the projecting sign, something to that effect.
Good.
Sounds good.
Thank
I
you.
think that's about as far as we can take it.
I think you're
Right.
right.
I appreciate it all.
Could I
Thank
hear a
you.
motion to approve, please?
So moved, Melody.
Second?
Second, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. Any further discussion? Hearing none, all in favor, please say aye.
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 Any opposed? Very good. Okay, that's all I have for tonight. Does anyone else have any parting comments they'd like to make?
No.
Okay, hearing none. Could I hear a motion to adjourn?
The only thing I would say is thank God your Wi-Fi held out and there you are. So with that,
Yeah, I know. Well,
I'll make a
miracles,
motion. to
miracles do
adjourn.
happen.
I know. Motion to
Is there a
adjourn.
second, please?
Second, Edna.
Thank you, Edna. All in favor, please say aye. Aye.
Aye.
Very
Good
good.
night, everybody.
Thank you all very
night.
much. It's been a good meeting.